One of the key features of the labor scheduling template for Microsoft Excel Retailers version is the ability to develop your staffing plan based upon your weekly sales forecast. In this video, we will review the process for setting up your sales forecast and your staffing needs, and using that to build a plan against which you can staff your employees. We are currently looking at the weekly sales forecast sheet, which is accessible from the Sales group on the ribbon by selecting the Weekly Sales Forecast button. On this sheet, we can set up the start date for the week. I'm going to change that now for the next week, and that will ripple through the dates for the entire week. We can also save the name of the store or location that this plan is for. If you have multiple locations, you can easily set up multiple sheets, and this will indicate which store or location this particular sheet is for. Once we have our sales forecast for the week, we enter that in row 15 against projected sales. Since in this particular case our store is closed on Sunday, we enter no value there, or a 0, and then spread the rest of our sales throughout the remainder of the week. This is a process that we would complete once each week. Let's move next to look at the hourly sales distribution, which is accessible from the Sales group in the ribbon by selecting the Hourly Sales Distribution button. On this sheet, you define the distribution or projected distribution of your sales for each day of the week. Here we can see that for this particular business, sales start at 9 AM, build to a peak around the lunch period, drop off in the afternoons, and then trail off towards the evening. Notice particularly that on Sunday we have 0 entries because the store is closed, and on Saturday, when we have shortened business hours, the sales are distributed over a shorter part of the working day. You will notice that the figures are highlighted in green. This indicates that for the particular day, the figures that you have entered add up to 100%. If I were to change one of these figures, for example to change this 5% to 7%, the colour would change until we corrected the figures and they summed to 100%. Let's just change that back before we continue. This is a process that you would probably complete monthly or maybe even quarterly. For most weeks there should be no need to change this distribution, as the pattern is probably similar from week to week for your business. Let's look next at the process for setting staffing levels. The staffing levels are accessible in the Staffing Needs group by selecting the Staffing Levels button. Here we have the high-level version of the Staffing Levels worksheet. It simply provides us with 2 columns for each role in our organization. The first allows us to establish the base staffing for the role. This is the number of people that we will require regardless of the sales volume at any point in time. And the second column is for variable staffing, so it establishes when we will add additional people based upon the sales volume in any particular hour. In this example, you can see that we will have 3 cashiers at any time of day, but that we will add 1 additional cashier for every $2,000 in sales per hour. Now, in many cases, this simple setup is sufficient, but you may find for your business you require more granular control. If you do, that can be achieved by going to the Options sheet, which is accessible from the Options group on the ribbon by selecting the Options button, and changing the planning level from High Level to Detailed. When you do so, you are asked if you would like to copy from the High Level plan to the Detailed plan. Generally speaking, you will want to say yes. However, if you had previously established a detailed plan and do not want to override it, you would select No. In this case, I'm going to select Yes. The system takes a moment to copy and expand the high-level plan we had established and drive out a detailed plan. As you can see in the Staffing Needs group, we now have two separate buttons for base staffing and for variable staffing. Let's look at each of those in turn. Under base staffing, we can still establish the base level of staffing we require for each skill, but now this has been expanded so that we can change those values for each day of the week and for each hour of the day. So for example, this is indicating that on Mondays at 9 AM I require 3 cashiers regardless of my projected sales volume. Looking at the variable staffing sheet, we can now control in a much finer grained way the sales increments at which we will need to add additional staffing. So for example, I will not add another cook until my sales volume per hour reaches $2,000. On the other hand, I will add an additional driver as soon as my sales volume reaches $1,000 per hour. In this way, you have the ability to control both base staffing and variable staffing by skill and by day. As with the hourly sales distribution, in most cases you will not need to change the base staffing level or the variable staffing levels once you have initially configured them. The only thing you should need to change on a week-to-week basis is the weekly sales forecast. Only when there have been significant changes to the way you want to staff your business or the distribution of your sales throughout the course of the day are you likely to need to re-enter either the hourly sales distribution, the base staffing, or the variable staffing. This completes the review of the setup of weekly sales forecast and staffing needs in the labor scheduling template for Microsoft Excel Retailers version.